not like I consciously didn't look at it, my mind just rejected it. It was like, no.
Alright, you have your Student Congress packet, which can be a little bit of information overload initially, but we break this down in a lot of parts and chunks and various things here. Couple things. Number one, your midterm from yesterday and Tuesday. I will probably pass those back to you next week. Have a couple of makeups so far as earlier sections that I want to get done before passing back, but they are in PowerSchool. And the breakdown, keep in mind, it did go into segments. So the part that you did yesterday was out of 30 points. The part that you did on Tuesday was out of 40, or 2, kind of what that was. But then also with it, purposely had your midterm review end up being 30 points. Because if you take that 30, 40, 30, and you add all those things together, you get a nice even 100. So there are certainly on any kind of test, whether it be a regurgit test later on in the day or a book, an AP exam, a midterm, final exam, there's going to be some parts that go better and some parts that don't go as well. So I wouldn't necessarily focus solely on if part one was rough, that means it absolutely was sabotaged to a grade or whatnot. I would take all three of those and add them up. So let's say you get a 30 out of 30 on the midterm review, you had the homework done. Part one, kind of a little rough, where you ended up getting a 20 out of 40, and now you're going, oh my goodness, that's a 50%. And then you rebounded yesterday and got a 30 out of 30. Well, you add those three things together, it's an 80 out of 100, which, at that point you're talking B minus 80%. So collectively, I would look at the whole thing, because any test, there's certainly going to be areas with strength, weaknesses, and stuff like that. But you put them all together, you get the 100 point. Keep in mind, we go total points so far as assignments. So theoretically, not theoretically, literally, the section that you did yesterday, even though it was classified as midterm exam, was worth equal amount of points, weight, significance as you completing the midterm exam review homework. Those of you that have had me before for English class, that I'll weight things differently. Argumentation, it's all total points. So, again, you can kind of add those things up and in some ways kind of get your midterm overview score, overall score out of that 100 points. Just was asking yesterday about final exam, and I didn't want to get into that because I knew it was going to take you most of the period to get through yesterday's part. We do have a final exam grade that we have to do at the end of the semester. It's semester course. It's just part of what we do. But I would not expect, and I don't know why, we would have like another exam objective test like you had for your midterm. I like to get that stuff halfway through the semester when it's still relatively fresh in your mind, and so we take care of that. Final exam grade will be a speaking activity. It's a speech debate class. I think it'd be silly not to have your final exam grade be you speaking in front of people. So we, yes, you have a final exam, but you are not having a 100-point Scantron test. You're not having a 2-day final exam set up the same way that we did the midterm. Your testing days for that type of stuff should be over. It's not to say we can't have quizzes like we did for eloquence quiz and things like that, because you actually have a quiz next Wednesday, which we'll get into. But your big test kind of stuff is done. Any questions about that stuff? Aaron, you're just holding a pencil. You're not holding a pencil. Student Congress is probably the most time-consuming project, not probably. Student Congress is the most time-consuming project that we're going to do throughout the course of the semester, which is perfectly fine. That does not make it a bad thing. For now through the end of next week, before you get to spring break, you're basically going to kind of be in your planning stage of what you are doing for Student Congress, and I'll certainly explain those steps here coming up. You have spring break. When we come back from spring break, you're going to have about a week to kind of finalize everything that's going on, and then that following Monday, which would be, I believe, April the 24th, is when Student Congress essentially would start to begin. What happens is all of you are going to present a bill. You're going to come up with some type of bill. That could be on the federal level, could be on the state, could be on the local, could be on the school level if you wanted. but you are going to advocate for a bill to pass. Generally, most people have it where it is creating some kind of new law, but you can create a bill where you want to take away some kind of existing law, again, on any of those levels, and that would be fine. You present your bill, so you are not debating against anyone. When Mary comes up to speak, Mary has the floor for her 5 to 7 minutes, and she simply speaks about it. You're not going against anybody. You present your bill. We ask you questions about it, so we get more information. We will do pro speeches as to why we support your bill. We can do con speeches as to why we don't think your bill is maybe a good idea or feasible at this point, and then we take a vote on it. And then we move on to the next one. Whether your bill passes or does not has absolutely no bearing on your grade. So much like when you were doing your debates that we were partnered up with before, if a person kind of won in the sense that probably had more votes if we were to vote on it, that didn't matter. Literally, if your bill passes, you do not get additional points, or if your bill does not pass, you do not lose points. So you don't have to worry about anything like that. For the way that this goes, there are a lot of components to it that we're going to be taking a look at, and you can see that so far as the way that the grades are going to be working. The main aspect that most people are going to focus on is going to be the speech that you give, which is going to be 75 points. Student Congress is going to show up as being a 100-point assignment in Power School. That's because I added to it your participation with pro-con speeches and questions. So there is a rubric within your packet for the speech, which we'll get into. But during the Student Congress session, so to speak, you're also accumulating more points so that you can end up with a total out of 100. Leading up to it, we'll do some other things. You have a research planner, which we're going to check in next Friday. And I'll explain what that is compared to a 5 arguments organizer. And then you also have a parliamentary procedure quiz. You're also submitting your bill, which is going to be a 10-point assignment. So when you add all of those things up, you very quickly end up with 45 points plus a 10-point bill submission, 55 points plus Student Congress. Overall, 155 points. There's a lot of points that starts to come in through Student Congress over the course of the next month or so. This is also your best opportunity to really get a lot of sources into your noodle bid project. This is really where you can make up a lot of ground if you feel that you're not quite yet where you should be with it. So we'll certainly kind of get into that. The setup, as I mentioned, is that you give a speech and we'll determine an order. We don't assign days because some bills take longer than others, so it's not that Sarah will go on Monday and Oliver would go on Tuesday and then Monica goes on Wednesday, but we would have our order of 1, 2, 3. Theoretically, 3 of you could go in one day. Might take 2 days to get through all 3, but you know the order in which the presentations are taking place, not assigned though to a specific date. Should Monica be absent, on when she would be going next, then Kendall would be stepping right up. So you'll know the order in which people are going to go and kind of be able to plan. Certainly when we start doing our presentations end of April, it's going to be going in the first couple weeks of May. A lot of you have AP exams in the morning and other trips and things would be taking place. So you just kind of plan accordingly and we'll be able to handle it as best as we can. The one point that is a little bit different, I think for people just to kind of understand, is you have your authorship speech. And so you earn a total number of points out of 75. Let's say you get 65 points following the rubric. Your grade, again, is not a 65 out of 100 because you still get points for giving pro-con speeches and asking questions. For a pro-con speech, you can earn up to 4 points. Aaron gives a wonderful pro speech. All we can do when you are done is stand up, clap, salute you. We all feel better about ourselves after having listened to him speak. He gets a 4. Jess is not here. Her speech does not carry the same magnitude that yours does because she's not here. So what does she get? It would be a 0. This is correct. Jess does not have a 0 out of 4. Aaron does not have a 4 out of 4. He has simply contributed 4 points towards his bank of 25. Jess has contributed 0 points. So she doesn't have a 0 out of 4 for assignment. It's just that she needs to give more speeches and ask more questions. So to earn these 25 points, it's about accumulating them. So you get points based on speeches, could be 1, could be 2, could be 3, could be 4. You ask questions. If it's a question, you get a point. If it's a good question, you end up getting 2 points. So however you get to those 25 points is up to you. If Aaron gives 6 wonderful speeches, how many points has he earned? 24. He asks his okay question. He's earned his 25. If he gives 10 okay pro-con speeches at 2 points apiece, how many points has he earned? He's earned his 20 points. He asks 3 really good questions. That's 6. You've earned your 25. You're done. It doesn't matter how you get there. It's just so far as you ultimately get there.
So I have 2 questions. One, you can't go over 25. So like
You can.
You would have got 26 then, right?
Yes, and that's why there's a little asterisk here. And I should have had a. Did I take it away by? Oh, right there. You can earn up to 30 points. So if you're at 31, no, you can't get that. But what that does give you the ability to do, let's say you have that 65 out of 75, he does earn those 30 points. Rather than having a 90% from the 25, he could get up to a 95%. So your grade is not solely determined by that speech. If you gave a real top-notch authorship speech, you got a 75 out of 75, and you never ask a question or give a pro-con speech, then you get your 75 out of 100, which does happen. And then you had another question.
So like, say we're trying to tally up how many points we have, trying to get 25. Will you tell us after pro-con speech, like that's a 4?
I won't do it after every single one. Generally what I'll do is at the end of weeks, like on Friday before we start, I'll run through, Caden, you got 4 points. Nick, you have 8 points. Steven, because I think his will be better than yours. Steven, 14 points, way to go. Luke, you have a donut, so we'll, as in a 0, not that. Or if you do have a donut, please share it. But I'll run through it and give you updates to it. Certainly, if someone wants to stick around after class, hey, how many points did I get for that speech? I can let you know. But it's not going to be, that was a twofer. Good job. You will know that the question did not work if I go, please strike that question from the record. Then that means that essentially there was no point to it. I feel like red or silver more is probably not going to be an appropriate question for whatever we're dealing with. Maybe it would. But if you do have a pro-con speech that for whatever reason, it doesn't go well, not a situation like Jess where she's not here, but you give a speech and you only get 1 point, you have not really hurt your grade, so to speak. It's just that you have to do more to get up to that step of 25 points or 30 points. Evan, I'll get to you here in a moment. There is a maximum of 10 questions that I will grade. So you cannot get to those 25 points by asking 25 fairly pointless questions. So I'll take your first 10 questions. You could have 20 points. You might have 15 points. So you have at least 10 points. So you will have to do some pro-con in order to get those points. And we have a large class, which means a lot of people want to speak, but also means there's a lot of opportunities to speak because of all the speeches that would be taking place. One of you is going to be the presiding officer. That means one of you sits up here with a gavel and makes a lot of noise. Stephen wants to be presiding officer. But we keep track of who asks questions and gives speeches. So if Lexi has asked 14 questions, well, that would be too high. You've asked 7 questions, and Evan has asked 4 questions, and both hands go up, Evan's getting called on first, because it would kind of even it out. For pro-con speeches, we do up to 3 each for each bill. So you're not going to have a run of, let's have 10 pro speeches for Joe's bill, because we would be here forever. So we do kind of have to keep it rolling a little bit.
Well, that's kind of what I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask, like, if two people do like a price speech and like they sound like similar, because like there's only so much you can like, talk about. Would you get points off for that? Or?
It really hasn't been an issue. If you were the second person to go and you're not really providing anything new, your score will most likely not be as high as what the previous one was. You do not sign up for pro-con speeches in advance. So it's not that you're going, all right, I have to go for this one. Most of them kind of happen on a whim. I don't like that idea, con speech. I never thought about that, and you give a pro speech. And so I think the fact that you are getting reactions, they do tend to vary. Now, there will be times where you might go, and similar to what Jake said, I would agree, but I would also add to it, and that's perfectly fine. The pro-con speeches are very informal. At most, they are 3 minutes long. It's more spar debate-ish, where you're just giving a quick speech. Generally, I bet they sit between, not generally, I bet, generally, they do sit between 60 and 90 seconds, minute.
So the pro-con speeches, that's just us like arguing for or against the person's like
Their idea.
bill that they-
Yep.
Like with the questions, you're grading 10 of them, but like, if you were to reach 10 questions and like you had like 2 or 3 of them that you got 1 point for, could you like ask more and like if they were 1 or 2?
No, you get graded based on your first 10. Now, you can continue to ask questions. You still have that right. But if you did have 2 1-pointers and 8 2-pointers, and then later on you ask some really good questions, those 1 points do not get replaced by those 2 points. But you certainly still have the right to ask the questions. All right.
Are you gonna ask us like what we're gonna be proposing?
Everyone is going to know about it. So-
like the same thing. Like, there's not gonna be any like overlap with this.
Correct.
Right, so like, let's say, I saw Missoula in the hallway, he was walking down. He did a student congress bill last semester. He wanted to take the baseball field out and replace it with a student parking lot.
That is a good idea.
It did not pass.
There are a lot of baseball players in
Well, he's a baseball player.
yeah.
His argument was we never use the field. It hardly gets used for anything. It'd be less distance to walk in the wintertime. And it was like a cold December day, I think, when he even presented it. It was perfect, weather conditions and everything for his bill. I don't remember part of it. A lot of things always boil down to money. And so the finances of putting the asphalt down and all that kind of stuff with it and whatnot. But his bill did not pass. But you would not have 3 bills about, let's put in a parking lot over there. Or we wouldn't have 5 bills about you should be able to have cell phones out at all times in class and things like that. What you are going to do, and this isn't going to be until next Friday, and certainly next week's student weekly syllabus will outline all of this stuff. I'm skipping the second page momentarily. The third page of your document, actually I may as well just pull it up on here, is your research planner for Student Congress. It says bill number 1, bill number 2, and it goes down to bill number 5 on the second page. For next Friday, which will be the 7th, you are going to have 5 bills figured out. And by 5 bills, they're not detailed specific, but 5 general ideas. So, Stephen, you could write student parking lot, baseball field. And we get the gist. Legalization of recreational use of marijuana. We get the gist to it. So you would have 5 bills. That's important because bill number 1 is not necessarily your best bill. There's always a bill that you kind of think of right off the bat, but you put a little bit more thought into it, you kind of come up with some better ideas possibly down the road. Also, you are going to submit your bills to me, and it's actually going to go through Google Classroom. And I don't know if today we'll get time to show it to you. Tomorrow I definitely will. But it's a first come, first serve kind of thing. So if you submit a bill, and then Nick submits a very similar bill, yours sticks, he has to come up with a new one. By you having 5 bills,
you have 5 options that you can definitely go with. So it avoids you kind of being stuck in that situation with, I don't have any other ideas. Well, you had to come up with 5 of them. With the 5 bills, possible bills that you're coming up with, I also want you to have a source. And the source does not mean it is an article or newspaper article, magazine, website that is arguing for your bill necessarily, but would want a source that goes back to the idea that you're coming up with. It's not uncommon that people want to change the bell schedule of senior high. And most people want to do what with the schedule? Well, some people want to shorten it. That one's kind of a little tough, but at the very least, people want to push it back. So, hey, maybe it's a 9 a.m. start time. And you certainly could find articles that would talk about, high school should have a later start time. Why do most people want a later start time? Why do you need to sleep?
It's good for your health.
So you could have an article that talks about the benefits of sleep. And that could be the source that you would be using as to why school should start later. No, it might not mention school should start later, but it is related to the idea that you are bringing forth. Okay? So I want you to have a source for each one of those bills. What can you do with those sources? They can go into your NoodleBib project. So even if you end up going with bill number 1, you could still have 4 additional sources from bill number 2, 3, 4, 5 that goes into NoodleBib project. And that's even before you really start coming up with more of the research that you want for your actual bill.
You want like a citation there, or do you just want the website?
You could, the website would be perfectly fine. You don't have to do like the full MLA form because that's going to go into the NoodleBib project. And you would simply go, Student Congress, this is one of my 5 possible bills, bill number 1, bill number 2, and that's enough for the annotation. And, I mean, that source might not even make it into your speech, but it's at least something that kind of lets you know why that idea is important. After the research planner, there is this 5 argument organizer. Don't cross it out, but you're not worried about it yet. After we come back from break, you are going to get a copy of everybody's bill so that you can start to see what would be some pro-con ideas that you would be interested in doing so that we know we don't have any repeats and stuff like that. But you will get a copy of everyone's bill. This is then you deciding, hey, Mike's bill, that's one that I would like to pro or con. Ryan's bill, this is one that I would like to pro or con. Here's some reason. Hey, here are some sources, which can go into your NoodleBib. But you're not worried about this stuff yet because that's going to be post-break. Because you need other people's bills before you can start to fill out that point. The page that we skipped, the second page, there is a chart. Wednesday, April 5th, you got a quiz. It's a parliamentary procedure quiz, and it's basically on this chart. I am not going to give you a picture of a blank chart and have you fill it in, but I'll give you questions based on the chart. So there could be a question that might be, what does it mean to, what's the previous question motion mean? And you would write down, end the debate, vote on the actual bill. There might be a question about what type of motions require a vote, or is there anything different about the vote for any of the bills? And you could put previous question needs 2/3 majority. Is recess debatable? And you would be able to write no. So the chart is where you're gaining your information, but the chart is not going to be the questions. What I would certainly look for are what are trends that you see or what are outliers that you see. So when it comes to is a bill debatable, amendment is debatable. The main motion, the actual bill, is going to be debatable. Type of votes, do they all need a vote? You can see yes, which one's a little bit different, previous question, 2/3. So if you are aware of what the trends are and what the outliers are, I think that gives you a better chance at doing well on the quiz. It's a 15-point quiz. Most scores end up being pretty good. and I'd say like 13, 14, 15, as being pretty good. So it's certainly not meant to be a grade crusher by any means. But when we do student congress, we do it in parliamentary procedure. So we have to do votes, we have to do seconds. We will lay a bill on the table, which means we pause our debate because the end of the period is coming. We'll go through all those kind of formal steps. One of you I mentioned is going to be the presiding officer, where you get to bang the gavel and go through a little bit of a power rush. Sounds good, doesn't it? If you are the presiding officer, you still present a bill like everyone else. If you are the presiding officer, though, you cannot ask questions and you cannot give pro-con speeches. And you would still get those points, but you just do it in a different way since you are kind of the person who is running everything. I'll still certainly be in the room. I'm the one grading stuff, sitting in the back corner or something. But if Evan's presiding officer, he's the one that's going to get the show started basically every day and get everything rolling. We'll figure out who's going to be presiding officer later on. I'm not worried about that right now. Questions? We had a lot of stuff thrown at you. Tomorrow we'll still kind of clarify some things that could take place. Still thinking about my still talk. Question number 1 is spell his name.
Stressing.
Who killed somebody with an axe? That's what I wanna know.
Like, and this
Who
is
does
like,
that?
it's just bad. It's just like, wow. That is
And
very-
then,
Now, for your speeches that are going to be taking place, actually, I guess we can blow this up. There are 4 types of speeches that can happen, although we're really only going to do 3. In the past, you've been able to do your authorship speech, a pro speech, a con speech. I've also allowed for amendments, and that's when you get the ability to change somebody's bill. With class of this size, no offense, I don't think we have time for it. It really kind of draws stuff out. So amendments we're not going to do. So technically there are 3 different types of speeches. But your authorship speech, and you will get a speech planner similar to the one that we used for the eloquent speeches that we did before for Student Congress. You're looking at 5 to 7 minutes. Now this is uninterrupted time. And so that can be a little intimidating initially because I have to speak for 5 minutes straight. The most I had to do before was 3 minutes. But really, it's no different from what you were doing before if you plan it out in the sense of, okay, I'm going to spend about a minute introducing my bill, explaining it. I'm going to take about 3 minutes of giving my main points, my arguments. And then if I do 2 minutes of a closing and rebuttal, I should be okay. Some folks might go, why would I need a rebuttal? I'm not arguing against anybody. Why do you need a rebuttal if you're not arguing against anybody?
To protect your bill when you get into pros con speeches.
Okay, and you're not going to be able to react to, like, you give a bill, Lexi hammers it. This is a terrible idea. You can't go, wait a minute. This is what I meant. But certainly within your bill, you can do that initial protection that, well, an argument against my bill might be where you can kind of anticipate what someone else was going to say, and you can explain why that's not necessarily going to be the case. Connor, do you have anything to add on to it, or basically the same idea? So if you plan it out in that way of about a minute, about 3 minutes, about 2 minutes, hey, you fall right in the middle of that 5 to 7 minute speech category and time, and there is no difference from what you really did before. So we'll go over those main details that you have to have, and you do have a rubric within your packet anyway. But you're advocating the passage of the bill. AGD is attention grabbing device or some kind of hook, in that introduction. Preview your main points, give your 2 to 3 main points, cite your evidence, you wrap things up, and then we ask you questions. And so that's essentially going to be your time. You give a 5-minute speech, you'll probably be up here for about 4 or 5 minutes fielding questions from people. It varies a little bit. You're not going to be up here for 20 minutes answering questions. Whoever gives the first speech probably don't get as many questions. If no hands go in the air, I'll ask you a question to get things rolling. And then we'll go from there. Okay. So you give your authorship speech. We throw out the opportunity then for pro speeches. And again, you can get up to 3 speeches, or 3 people can come up to give a pro speech. They have 3 minutes to speak. I doubt that many of you are going to use up the whole 3 minutes. So Kendall comes up, speaks for a minute and a half. That means we can now ask her questions for the remainder of the 3 minutes about the pro. And it can certainly happen about the con speeches as well. I mentioned that you can come back up and argue about your bill, but Lexi gives a 2-minute speech. You could ask her a question about the speech that she just gave, and that might kind of protect your bill. Really the main thing that I ask when we ask questions, ask direct questions. Were you aware that, and then you start rattling off all this information? You're not asking a question. You're giving a speech. If you're going to ask a question, ask a question. So we try to avoid the "were you aware?" "Did you know that?" Is a way that people try to kind of fit in their points of views. You want to ask direct questions. It is possible that Oliver could ask me a question that I don't know the answer to. And I simply say, I don't know. And there's nothing really wrong with that. But you don't want to ask a question where you're trying to get your agenda across when you have the opportunity to give pro-con speeches anyway. So we have 3 pro speeches. We have 3 con speeches that come up. And again, you can earn up to 4 points for that. Essentially, the way that this is going to work is the presiding officer reads the bill. We have our speech, mandatory questions. 3 minutes is probably a little low. It'll be a little bit longer. We'll do our pro, we'll do our con, and then we end up voting for it. When you set up the introduction to your bill, you do not have to read your bill to us because we all have a physical printed out copy of those bills. So it's not going to be a mystery. What's Becca's bill again? We all have a copy in front of it. So you don't need to spend a minute reading your bill because A, the presiding officer is going to read it, and then B, we all have a copy of it. So you're just going to kind of jump into what your speech is right away. And I will give you a piece of paper that outlines all this stuff for you as well. We do traditional parliamentary procedure. So Martin gives his speech. Luke has a question. Hand goes up. Will the speaker yield to a question? He'll say yes, and then you stand up and ask your formal question. Martin has to answer the question if it's his speech. So even though you're asking, will the speaker yield to a question, it's technically being polite, but it's a formality. You do have to answer his question. You ask the question, he gives an answer. You want a little bit more, you can then do, will the speaker yield to a follow-up question? Yes, and then you can ask one more. You cannot do follow-ups over and over and over. You can do one follow-up. Aaron, you were asking about like points for questions and all that kind of stuff. Your initial question is so-so, but then your follow-up question is really good. That now could become a 2-point question. It's not 1 point plus 2 equaling 3. Follow-up, it's still going to be part of one score, but it could make the question better. Conversely, it could make it worse. Usually people will do a follow-up question for a point of clarification. You know, something was a little ambiguous with the answer. Some of you are a little sneaky and will use it to set something up. You know, almost like a complex question. So they give an answer. Okay, will the speaker yield to a follow-up question? And then you might kind of ask your real question in that regard. But you certainly have the ability to do follow-up questions. It just has to be one. For pro-con speeches, Sarah gives a pro speech. Jake goes, will the speaker yield to a question? Because it's a pro or a con speech, Sarah can say, nope. And then Jake goes like this and sits down. You want to be careful though, because if Sarah says no to Jake, what's probably going to happen when Jake gives a speech and Sarah wants to ask a question, he's probably going to go, nope, and kind of move on. So you have to be a little judicious as to when you say no, because you don't want it to have any negative effects and consequences for you. The schedule again. We're going to have laptops in here tomorrow.
we're gonna go over some final details with this to make sure we're all on the same page. I wanna show you how you are going to submit your bills. I've never done an assignment through Google Classroom before, where like you actually submit it through Google Classroom, so we're gonna try it out and make sure it kind of works. I'll show you where you're gonna be submitting your bills, but essentially, for the next few days, you're kind of researching what would possible bills be. As soon as you know what your formal bill, and that's something that we need to talk about tomorrow, the steps to the formal bill, you want to submit it. It is due next Friday, but if you submit it Monday, perfectly fine. The advantage of submitting it early, if it's an idea that a lot of people want to go with, you've already claimed it. We are not going to recycle any ideas that we've already done. So mandatory voting, Philadelphia sugar tax, that kind of stuff we're not going to do again. We've already debated it. There's enough issues, ideas out there that we don't have to, repeat those things over and over and over again. But again, you can certainly start thinking. You can think school level, local, state, national. We're not going to do a bill where you are going to annex Canada and make it the 51st state or anything like that, because now you're getting into global issues. If you wanted to do something about, a troop withdrawal with a conflict that the U.S. is involved in, that's fine, because you're still dealing with domestic issues, just with the foreign policy. But we're not going to do anything that is overstepping U.S. bounds. We'll talk about the wording of your bills, but the last line of your bill for everyone is going to be all laws in conflict will be null and void. So there will be some bills that change the Constitution, but that last line keeps people from going, did you know your bill's constitutional, is unconstitutional? Yes, but all laws in conflict will be declared null and void, kind of takes care of that. So you could do things that would change accepted practice protocol within school, city, state, country. And so we'll take a look at that stuff again tomorrow with the format of your bill. Start thinking about ideas that would be good that you want to take a look at. Any questions? Next week, I don't know about you folks, I know a lot of my other classes, I've been signing field trip forms for Thursday and Friday. So if you are not here next week on Thursday and Friday, that is fine. That's why the quiz is on Wednesday, but you're still responsible for submitting your bill to me by the end of the school day on Friday. Okay.
Yeah, you can come on up. I can give you one. If only that could happen every day. Our lives would be